Hi, welcome. This is another episode of Future Journalism Today Live, and I was just reading this magazine, Delayed Gratification. We'll be talking with the co-founder, Rob Orchard, on this Future Journalism Today Live. It's the fourth episode, and it's a new set for those of us who are joining us for the maybe second, third, or fourth time. You can see it's a new set. I'm sitting. This is the microphone. My laptop is over here. The chat will be right there, I think, and I've got some magazines. I've got a glass of water, so I think we're all set. Let me tell you what we will be doing before I introduce Rob to the show. As every week, we have a special guest. Every week, I mean every month, of course. We have a special guest on the show. And today, that is Rob Orchard, as said. And he is the co-founder, publisher, editor of the slow journalism company that publishes the Delayed Gratification magazine. And we're going to ask him for some advice, some unboxing. It will be a special mini course on data visualization this time. And he has some tips and tricks. So please stay tuned. We've got some advice. He's going to tell us to stop doing this journalist and start doing that. And we'll be answering your questions from the live chat. So please go to the chat, say hi, tell us who you are, where you're from. And I forgot last time, but you do have to subscribe. I want to ask you, please subscribe to this channel so you will be updated when new episodes are to be announced. So please do. And now, before we begin, let me welcome Rob to the live show. And I'll have to unmute him and let's see if we can get him on stage. Welcome, Rob. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here. Welcome, everybody, to my children's playroom. It's just
good to see you.
This children's playroom.
I'm sorry, you're in the playroom.
Yes.
That's good to know. That's good to know, Rob. Now, let me just introduce you very quickly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I might have put the facts wrong, or you might want to add. But let me just give you a short introduction for the audience. Now, your name is Rob Orchard, of course. I said founder, editor, and publisher of this beautiful magazine. Let me show it right on screen. Delayed Gratification. It's a quarterly magazine. You do even around 12,000 copies will be printed next issue.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then you tally by readership. You say we got 36,000 readers for a quarterly magazine. Am I correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's ad-free, it's subscription-based, and if you're not living in the UK, then you have to pay around £48, right, sterling.
That's right.
To get a yearly subscription. And because it's ads-free, there's a subscription, but you also do events like workshops, reading clubs, and even how to start an independent magazine, how to launch an independent magazine, right? That's one of the workshops. Yeah. And if you do some research on delayed gratification online, you'll find that you are sometimes being likened to De Correspondent, which is originated in the Netherlands, or Tortoise, which is also in the UK, I presume. And it's all around this sort of movement of slow journalism. How do you feel about this likening?
Yeah. So all of that is correct. Also, if you do buy a subscription for £48, then you get free access to our complete digital archive. So you get the print magazine, but you also get 10 years now of slow journalism in digital format that you can consume at your leisure. Thousands upon thousands of pages of beautiful infographics and long-form features and so on.
And that's just for £48.
Yeah, for £48, plus also you get up to 50% off all of our classes. So how to be a features writer, how to launch an independent magazine, how to make infographics, how to be a graphic journalist, how to be a non-fiction author. So we try to give people lots and lots of value. And as you say, it's completely advertiser free. It's just, we kind of operate on the basis that you paid for some really good editorial and some good journalism, and that's all you're going to get. Nobody's going to try and sell you anything.
And I forgot to mention, you started around 10 years ago now, right?
Right, so this next issue, so the one that you've got is issue 39. The one that we're working on now, and that goes
this one, right? This is 39.
Yeah. So number 40, which marks 10 years of slow journalism, 10 years of the slow journalism company and delayed gratification, that goes to press on Tuesday next week.
Tuesday next week. So you're quite. I must imagine you're quite busy at the moment. Now
Yeah.
let me just show a little bit more about what you've created over these years. We've got. Let me see. This is just there's some covers of your latest issues, and you do commission the cover design to a different artist each new issue, right?
So every issue of the magazine, we've gone to an artist that we love, and we've said to them, could we have an artwork for the cover? And the very first one that we did was to Shepard Fairey, who's a very famous and very wonderful artist. So that was back in issue 1. And my co-editor
with the Obey, the founder of Obey.
Exactly. And the Obama Hope poster.
Yeah.
And so my co-editor Marcus went to him. And bear in mind, at that stage, we had nothing. We had just kind of an idea. But Marcus went and spoke to him, and Shepard Fairey really liked the idea. And so he agreed to give us an artwork for the cover of issue 1. So actually, we've always had a different person on each cover, except for we went back to Shepard Fairey for the cover of our 5-year anniversary issue 20, and we got back to him for this next issue for 10 years. On both occasions, he's given us an artwork again very generously. And we always interview the artists inside, and I love the interview with Shepard Fairey this time, because basically we say to him, so we're here 10 years on, and the first thing that he says in response is, yeah, I mean, like, I'm really pleased, but I'm kind of surprised. I wasn't really betting on you guys making it this far. We've always had it. I think the idea is that we want something that is collectible and something special, with something timeless and beautiful on the cover. Plus also we get to speak to the likes of Ai Weiwei and Grayson Perry and all sorts of fantastic people. But the idea is, I think, if you have a magazine that's got kind of cover lines and specific photos about specific periods of time, then it kind of dates a lot. Whereas actually the idea with this magazine is that you build it up into a collection, and it's kind of like I suppose it's a kind of contemporary history of the world that you're building up there. So we want it always to feel timeless.
Yeah, because the way you describe delayed gratification is that it's once the dust has settled on the breaking news, things that are happening each day, you try to take a step back and see what developments mean and what happened after the dust has settled, right? That's your philosophy here.
That's exactly right. So once every 3 months, we draw a line in the sand, we return to the big stories, and after the rest of the media have moved on, and we ask the question of what happened next. So, for example, in our next issue, we have a fascinating, heartbreaking 10-page feature about the explosion in Beirut on the 4th of August and the aftermath. And of course, that's a classic story for us, insofar as it was a story that was covered 24/7 for 3 or 4 days, and then suddenly dropped off the agenda. And there's very little mainstream coverage of what's happening, 3 months on, in a city that's got this gaping hole at the heart of it, and when nobody has yet been, brought to justice for what happened. So that's the heart of what we do, is returning to big stories, asking what happened next. But we also like to say that we try to tell the stories that others missed, along the way as well. So those kind of quirky, more interesting stories that kind of maybe dropped through the cracks the first time around.
Yeah, let us go into that a little bit further later on. I've got this spread I wanted to show. This is from the latest issue, The Day the Earth Stood Still. So this is after 3 months you were able to look back upon lockdowns around the world, and you did something like this. This was with Chris Zimmerman, right?
That's right. Well, it was you helping as well, but yeah, Chris Zimmerman at Google was very helpful in sharpening up our journalistic use of kind of Google's data. So Google has the most incredible amount of data. So this was Marcus, my co-editor. He had a real bee in his bonnet about this, and he was right, because what it was he was tracking spikes or search terms which spiked over the course of the early days of the pandemic and through. And so you go hoarding, pandemic, toilet paper. Suddenly everybody's looking for that. Coronavirus, what the hell is this thing? Hand sanitizer, vaccine. Curfew, hydroxychloroquine when Trump starts tweeting about this miracle cure, quarantine, ammunition, quite worryingly, boredom, exercise bikes, paint roller, virtual tour. This is my favorite bit. It goes homeschooling, and then immediately afterwards the spike is for when will schools open? And then it kind of goes through all of these different things that people are doing, working out about Zoom dating, cutting their own hair, how to make their own McDonald's and things like that. And it ends with a very, very sad thing about how many people can attend a funeral. But this, for me, I mean, it was such a strange time we were living through, this initial lockdown. A third of the world's population was in lockdown at one point. And we just wanted to do something that kind of took the temperature at that time, as well as looking at the mortality and the economic impact, but what it was like for a third of the world's population to be cooped up indoors trying to function. I think this was quite a nice way to do it.
And there was so much uncertainty and so much things that were unknown. So it's really nice to sit back and say, oh, this happened and this happened, to have this in a sort of linear way as well, but also about things that you might have forgotten already because we had to move on from fear to next fear to next fear, maybe perhaps, or uncertainty. So this gives you some comfort as well. Right?
One of the fantastic things about humans is that we can get used to almost anything. And so, all of this has become very kind of normal. And one of my favorite things on there was there was a spike in people searching for how to unmute on Zoom, which was such a touching kind of human thing. We all had to learn that. We all had a lot of conversations with people saying, you've got to unmute, you've got to unmute. And I think, it's because we are so good at adapting, quite quickly we forget how strange and alien and kind of scary the whole thing was.
Yeah.
It is, particularly at the beginning.
And things like drive-by birthday party and
birthday party.
3-day printed face masks, and you wouldn't be able to make sense of it last December, I think, and now it makes total sense that people were searching for it.
Birthday party was something that nobody had ever searched for before because nobody had ever needed to.
Yeah. Well, very interesting, Rob. Let me just show another slide about the online events and classes. In 2021, people can still sign up, I think, for the live event on how to launch an indie magazine, right?
Oh, so actually,
can you share a little bit about what you will be covering?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that particular one on December is sold out, but I think we have another one in January.
Yeah.
And so the How to Launch an Independent Magazine, it's really nice. All of the classes that we do are really nice. But that one is me just talking people through every single step that they need to know, and trying to condense 10 years worth of getting it kind of wrong and learning from it into a load of shortcuts so people don't have to take so long. And I kind of have a series of lessons that I put up as big slides, like things that I would like people to think about. And some of them are quite commercial things and some of them are more editorial things. But the very first thing that I put up on the screen in terms of a lesson is you shouldn't launch an independent magazine.
You shouldn't.
So, I mean, I think the sort of my thought on it is, there's such an incredibly high potential that if you launch an independent magazine that is going to fail and you're going to lose money and it's going to break your heart, that if you pay your, £20 plus VAT to come to my class, and the one thing that you learn is that you shouldn't, that's fine, that's good. Like, I've maybe saved you thousands of pounds and possibly a divorce, so that's good.
Yeah.
And obviously, I then kind of go on to say, but if you still want to, knowing all these things that I've told you, then this is how you do it. And I also think that people should launch independent magazines. I think it's one of the most fun and exciting things people can do. And of course, it all comes down to how good the idea and the execution is. And, if they get a great idea and execution, then they can still flourish.
And will you be giving feedback on these ideas participants take into this course?
Yes, definitely. So we have lots and lots of workshop elements to it. We've got plenty of time to work things up. And what generally happens afterwards is, so I give everybody my email address and make myself available because I like helping people with these projects. And I've had a series of people since kind of launch magazines and launch kind of financing projects for magazines after having come to the class, which is really exciting.
Yeah, well, it sounds wonderful, Rob. And let me go into finish these slides, and then we can go full screen more or less. And it's just one question. And when you're sort of celebrating your 10-year anniversary, you had there was a certain context why you started in 2010 and what the challenges of journalism were on that day. Do they still exist? Can you tell us a bit about why you founded 2010 and what has changed?
For sure, yeah, definitely. So I started this magazine with a group of friends.
Yeah.
And kind of the initial idea came from a group that, we'd known each other for 10 years. We worked together in our first jobs in journalism back in the early noughties.
Was it at Time Out as well?
Or? Yeah. We were at Time Out magazine in Dubai. And so so we kind of came to 2010 and we found ourselves living back in London. And we happened to make the acquaintance of an absolutely fantastic designer who became our art director and also became a partner in the company. Yeah. So there's kind of group of us, and we were looking out on the media landscape and finding it to be very dispiriting, very disheartening. Everybody was saying that print was dead and the future was digital, but nobody had worked out a way to make money out of digital, not really. And really experienced journalists and editors were being let go the whole time. So the market was awash with people, and freelance fees were incredibly low. Word rates hadn't changed in years. The whole impetus and pressure seemed to be towards writing fewer words, more provocatively, faster. And we were all sort of starting to get to grips with what it meant to live in a news environment which was driven by social media, which was still in its infancy then.
Yeah.
So we were looking at that. We're thinking, like, none of this is pleasing to us. We all, fell in love with print and with magazines and with journalism when we started in our jobs, and we wanted to put our flag in the sand and say, oh no, this is worth defending and this is worth doing. Yeah. So we started it with we had a really, I would say, a totally rotten business plan, which was based largely, sort of held together with hope and sticky tape. And it didn't really get us much beyond issue 1. And so we had a really hard time for the first few years, trying to work out how we were going to make ends meet, trying to kind of, keep the bills paid and the journalists paid and all that sort of stuff. And so that was the environment that it came out of, just wanting to say, we're going to do the opposite of what we see around us. Instead of being digital, we're going to be print.
And now 10 years on, does that still hold true? We want to do the opposite.
Exactly. Instead of immediate knee-jerk reaction, we want slow, considered responses, advertiser funding, and making everything free. We want to make it reader funded. And actually, a lot of that stuff has now become much more kind of part of the mainstream since then. I suppose that 10 years on, has anybody still quite figured out how to make digital pay? Some of the big publications have. New York Times is doing well. Guardian has got a kind of good model. The Correspondent you mentioned earlier, they've got an absolutely fantastic platform.
The donations, subscriptions-based models, they do seem to work, or people are willing to pay for high quality journalism in that matter. So what will happen in the next 10 years, you think? What are your ideas?
Well, blimey. So
it's called Future Journalism Today, and I know you're going to give some advice. So
you've got to be bang to rights. You've got to be bang to rights. No, I think that's completely fair. So I think one thing I would say is, yes, the digital model has been proven to work for some organizations.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at the sort of specifics of them, you've got people like the New York Times, which have this incredible pedigree and have been able to kind of leverage incredible journalism and this kind of this. They've also managed to ride a presidency, a kind of incredibly unsettling presidency, where the president set himself up explicitly in opposition to the New York Times, and so that's interesting. The Guardian had an incredible reach, and it had the funding to keep going while it transitioned to this new model, and they have amazing journalism again, and the reach and the numbers and so on. Yeah. Whether there are models that work for smaller organizations in quite the same way, or whether there's a limit on the number of organizations that can be supported in that way, I don't know. I mean, I think the next 10 years is more of the same, but I think the thing that's different, so more of the same insofar as journalists and editors are still going to be fighting to try to get the funding that they need to do the stories that they think are important. We've still had a complete decimation of local news journalism, and I don't see that coming back anytime soon. And there's still constant and relentless pressure on, journalism. It's not an economic model that kind of works very well. But I suppose the difference that I sense in what will happen in the next 10 years is that I think that a lot of the big conversations, big changes in outlook have happened. So 10 years ago, I think we were in love with digital. And I think that we saw only the positives and how amazing it was to have a world, on our phones that was kind of instantly accessible, and all of this data and everything was going to be amazing. I think we're much, much, much more skeptical now. We've had our fingers burnt many times over the last 10 years, data breaches, hacking, people co-opting social media for political ends and naked kind of commercial ends, all of these things. So I think we're much more wary of digital.
Yeah, you could say that everyone matured, the industry, but also users and people tend to think. So now we might know a bit about what works and what doesn't work, or what we should be doing or should not be wanting to do, perhaps. And
I think that's right. And
I
also,
was
just on that point, I think also that the other argument that's been made is that good journalism costs money. And I
yeah.
don't think people expect, I don't think they expect to get good journalism for free. And I think if they get stuff for free, they don't expect it to be good journalism.
Yeah, so that might have been a sort of a schism of, and so if you want the high quality news you might be able to, or you might need to pay for it, right? Because
Yeah.
it might be harder to. But I think that's interesting. And there's another thing, and I'm trying to sort of make a little connection to our next item, which is the unboxing, because you are going to give us a mini course on data visualization, and you say you have a if I were to call it a trick, I would be sort of cursing in the church, as we say in the Netherlands. But you say, I'm going to teach you something, and after that you will see things different in data visualization. So I have to start the banner. So please allow me, and then I'll look at the live chat to see if there are any questions. But first, I'll open up the banner, the unboxing banner, so people know it's a new segment on the show. Here it is.
Oh, look at that! That's beautiful.
And then we call it. It's the Minicourse Dataviz, and I'll have to remove this one. So if you could share your screen with us, and I'll look at the live Q&A to see if there are any questions or comments at this point.
Very good.
And no, I don't see any. And here I'll add you to the stream, your screen, and it's there. So take it away, Rob.
Very good. Okay, so this, I'm just going to give you a very short, actually it's not that short, maybe 10 minutes. I'm going to rattle through, but I'm going to give you, I think the kind of the most useful segment of the how to make infographics course that we did. So I taught this last night, and I'm going to do a really quick zoom for this, but basically, the art director and Christian and I, when we first started teaching this class, we started looking at all the types of infographics they were, and we thought that we could probably boil them down into 5 different types of infographic. We stand by that, because we did that quite a long time ago, and we still think that there's only actually 5 fundamental types of infographic, and every infographic that you see, even if it's the most complex and beautiful thing, is made of these component parts. And the reason this is a nice trick, this is a nice shortcut, is that once you know what these 5 are and what they're used for, you can very, very quickly, when you're trying to do a piece of data journalism or a lovely data story, you can know which one you should reach for. So the 5 are illustrative, proportional, timeline, map, and list. I'm going to rattle through very quickly, show you what those are, and give you some quick examples. So illustrative. Illustrative is just a beautiful illustration and a number. And it used to be the case that you needed to be a really fantastic designer in order to make kind of gorgeous illustrations. That's no longer the case. You can get fantastic sheafs of illustrations from what do you call them? From some press images site, not press images site, but stock images site. Sorry, stock images site. Very, very cheaply, like $25, you can get a sheaf of lovely things. So you can do this. All you need is an illustration and a number. So here's a nice one that we did a while back. It's called You versus Denise Coates. And it's about Denise Coates, who's a multi-billionaire founder and co-CEO of Bet365, a gambling company. She got £265 million of compensation for her work in 2017. So if you were taking home the UK's average salary, she'd be earning 9,864 times more than you. So we wanted to kind of try to put that in context. So what that would mean in terms of spending power. So, for example, if you, on the average UK salary, buy a pint of milk for 52p, that's the equivalent of Denise Coates buying 4 magnums of Moët Chandon's Dom Perignon P2 1993 vintage. If you treat yourself to an off-peak single train ticket from London to Milton Keynes and a lovely cup of tea, that's the same as Denise Coates taking a trip to space on Virgin Galactic. And if you buy 2 top-tier Spurs season tickets, that's the same as her being able to buy Sunderland Football Club. So all that is just kind of a series of interesting numbers enlivened by this lovely visual shorthand of the illustrations drawn by Chris.
This is the first one, right? Illustration. Yeah.
Exactly. So illustrative is just number and illustration. Yeah. And there's another little one there as well. So where we compared the defence spending of Georgia over 2016 with Manchester City's defence spending over kind of a similar course of time. So again, just 2 interesting numbers, a couple of illustrations, so that gives you a visual shorthand of what the story's about. Jobs are good. So that's illustration, and I would say you're going to want to reach for that if you are trying to highlight single facts or statistics within a story, if you want to create a visual shorthand for a broader story, if you want to give the viewer or the reader a way into something. So for example, if you're writing kind of a big report or a long form piece of journalism, then actually to have a little kind of thing like this can be great. And it tends to be, when I see people at the newsstand looking at the magazine, it tends to be not the long form pieces of journalism that they stop on. It tends to be the lovely little individual infographics. So illustrative is great for that. Proportional.
Yep. Second one, right?
Yeah, proportional. Number 2. I'll give you a nice example of proportionality. So this is a thing called a tree map, which used to be very difficult to do and is now beautifully simple with a free program called Infogram. So you
Infogram, you say?
Yeah, so Infogram was infogr.am, infogr.am. You can sign up.
Put it in the show notes.
Yeah, put it in the show notes. And you can make a tree map very easy. So you just upload a CSV of your numbers, and it will sort it into a beautiful tree map, and it will all be the perfect shape and so on. So this is just one we did a few years ago, where we worked out how much it would cost to buy everything in the September issue of Vogue, which was £638,713. And the lovely thing about a tree map is that you can do multiple layers of proportionality. So you can see overall thematically that you'd have spent £213,560 on dresses and skirts and £44,841 on footwear. But also you can go within that. So you can say you would have spent £3,654 on ponchos, and you can highlight individual items. So actually there's an embroidered silk maxi dress from Dior for £26,000. And of course, then you can add kind of multiple ones together. You can put, we did a little bit of analysis on GQ at the same time, so you can kind of compare between the magazines as well as within the magazines. So proportionality is the thing that you'll reach for if the heart of your story is about numerical comparison, showing highs, lows, or averages, or giving context, so showing that something is greater than or less than something else. You can reach for proportionality. And that's not to say that you would use it on its own. You might also layer in some extra things, but that's going to be the backbone. That's going to be the spine of your thing.
Yep.
Timeline. So here's a very, very kind of simple timeline infographic. It just shows the tallest structure in the world and how long it was the tallest structure for. And initially we did this in the magazine as just a straightforward bar chart showing them going up, and then the couple of dates underneath. And then we came back to this fact that the Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest in the world for 4,000 odd years. So we just wanted to show on the timeline exactly how long that was and how the other things came in and how long they were dominant for.
Yeah.
So a timeline is
a very elegant example, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, well, we have Christian to thank about our art director.
Yeah.
But so the timeline is what you will reach for if your story is about change over time, history, a flow, a path, or a process, or projecting into the future. If that is at the heart of your story, then you need a timeline, and then to build other things on top of that. Map. Right. So in general, I avoid maps. And we have a sort of expression in the office when we're talking about maps and why they often don't work, which is this: Russia always wins. So if you have a story that includes Russia, so you've got kind of like greater Europe, I suppose. If you have a story like that and you want to compare countries, then the temptation is always just to get a map and then color code the different countries to represent different levels of whatever it is that you're measuring. The problem is, though, that Russia is so colossally gigantic that the eye doesn't see the different colors. The eye just sees proportionality, and it just assumes that Russia has won. So there's ways around it. So, for example, with the US, we have used maps before where we've just used squares, same-size squares to represent the different states, all in geographically more or less the same place. And then you can do effectively kind of a proportionality combined with a map. But generally, I would say I would avoid maps on their own for that reason. They're great for giving a visual shorthand that a story is about something, but generally I'd use them in combination with proportionality, whatever it might be. However, there are some exceptions. So here's one. So this is just an infographic we made about the 2011 census in England and Wales. Yep. And we just looked at people who had ticked to say that they had no religion. Really interesting group of people. And we did a per capita analysis. So we worked out that there were the kind of the 10 most divine places in the country, in England and Wales, which had the smallest percentage of people ticking no religion, and the most damned places in the country, which were those which had the greatest percentage of people ticking no religion. And so I had these two lists, and I went to our art director and I said, I can see this already. It's a double-page spread, and at the center of the page, you've got a twirling vortex, and you've got these small characters being flung up towards heaven, and they're sprouting wings, and they've got harps. And on the other side, you've got these little characters being flung down towards hell, and they're sprouting horns, and they've got tridents. And in their other hand, they are grasping something which is indicative of the town that they are from. And our art director said, no. He said, quite apart from anything else, how are you going to represent Bridgend convincingly with one kind of individual item? And he said, but let's put it on a map and see what happens. And we did, and this fascinating story came out that was not immediately apparent from just looking at the list, which is that you have this cluster of believers in the post-industrialized towns of the north, which have seen very high levels of immigration. Yep. And you have this swathe of non-believers out in Wales and the south and out in the east, which have seen relatively low levels of immigration, with a fascinating outlier. So anybody who's watching from the UK will find this particularly interesting, that Slough is the holiest, most divine place in the entire country, Slough in Berkshire. So I would say...
People wouldn't expect, you say.
No, I mean, it's, I don't have anything against Slough. And if you're watching from Slough, all power to you, but I wouldn't necessarily think of it as a kind of a tremendously sacred and holy spot, but what do I know?
By the way, may I note, Rob, that you just, I wanted to ask, how do stories come about? How do you start with certain stories? And now you've sort of explained a little bit more in detail, sort of how it's made, how it was made, that you had a different idea, then the art director said no, and then a different story came out of the lists, right? Yeah. More or less, right? Yeah.
So every issue of the magazine has got maybe 18 individual infographics in it.
Yeah.
And for every infographic that we include, we reject maybe 4. So, we'll have an idea. So we're constantly sending ideas to a special Gmail account, which is for ideas. And when the next issue's gone to press, when it comes to looking at the ideas, we'll go through. And a lot of them we've sent at sort of 2 in the morning, and they don't really make sense.
So you have a special idea account, Gmail account, just to share, send each other ideas.
Exactly. So everybody's doing it.
Okay.
And then so we get together, we go through it, we're like, what the hell was this about? So there's always lots of infographic ideas. We start going through them because, of course, because we have a 3-month delay. So the issue that covers this time we're living through now, October, November, December, we'll be working on it, from December through till March. It'll come out in March. So actually, all throughout this period now, when I see an interesting news item or have an idea about an infographic, I send it to this ideas thing, this ideas Gmail. And so, so we kind of go through, we start researching things, we see if the data's there. We talk about how we would present it and whether it should be a small thing or a big thing. So many times we do the data research for something massive, and then we look at it in a cold light of day and we realize it's not that interesting, but there may be one fascinating fact in there. And so we just do the kind of the small fact in there.
Yeah. So that's how the process sort of evolved into becoming, more or less. Yeah.
I mean, I'm very lucky because I worked with the same group of people for 10 years. And so now we have a real kind of, we have a real speedy way of doing it, because we can say, oh, this would be like this, or we could revisit this sort of style, or we could make it a bit like this and this and this. But yeah, God, it takes flipping forever, absolutely forever. So
Rob, we still got one left. I just want to show this this comment by one of the viewers. She's one of our biggest fans, Anna Maria Vanderville. She said, "I love that. That is great." And I think she refers to how the map idea came about by religion. It could also be your way of work, maybe with the Gmail account. But I hope she speaks for everyone who's watching. So let's go through the last item and don't keep us waiting any longer.
Brilliant, fantastic. So maps, I'd say I use for geographic patterns if they're on their own and nothing else. And then finally, the list. Now, a lot of people kind of overlook lists as a type of infographic, but actually they can be incredibly powerful, a great way to convey a lot of data, and you can make them very simply. So actually, Marcus has worked out a way to do a version of one of the list features, the list infographics that we do through PowerPoint, and make it look kind of convincing in PowerPoint. So this is not done in PowerPoint. This is a thing that we do every year, and we take the Premier League table, how it ended up, And then we get this fantastic data from a company called Opta, amazing sports data company. So you've got the table of how it stood at the end of the 2017-18 season. And then you have it tweaked to see what would have happened if football was completely different as a game. So if the game of football only lasted for one half, so you only count the goals that happened by half time. If there were no goalkeepers, so every single time somebody took a shot on goal, it went in. If only headed goals counted, and then if only goals scored by English players in the English Premier League counted. And you can just see this lovely visual sorting that the table reshifts. And
because the format is called a Sankey diagram, I believe, right?
Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. And it's one that we use over and over again in the magazine. In fact, we've used it for quite a lot of our
to show the flow of how things would play out if there was a different migration of numbers, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So there's lots of nice things that you can do around that. So I would say a list one, final one is, this is the thing. If the heart of your story is about showing rankings, highlighting commonality, or doing some simple categorization and making that kind of clear. But I love lists because I think they're sort of super simple. And as I said, you often wouldn't use these things just in isolation. Very often you would use them in combination with you combine three or four together to get the effect you wanted.
Well, Rob, thank you very, very much for showing us these 5 sort of different ways of visualizing data and for data visualization and giving this course. And I hope all of our viewers and people who are watching this at a later point will tend to see every new maybe assignment or the other data visualization within these, could sort of categorize them within these 5. So thank you for sharing these insights and these wonderful examples too, and how your stories mostly come about. And it seems like it's a very organic process, and you found a way to see where the interesting stories are and a process. So really, really insightful, and thank you for sharing this with us. Now, there is another question from the same viewer, Anna Mariah, and she asks, I have a question about the great covers you have. Always a different designer. Is that a strategy?
Yeah, it definitely is. It is. So firstly, we love showcasing the work of amazing artists. So we love to get really big name artists, but also we love to have lesser known artists and kind of like, I would never say that we discovered anybody, but, people who are with a kind of a lower profile and give them, the lovely format of a magazine cover, and a magazine cover without cover lines on it as well.
Do you get a lot of designers asking you if they can design something for your cover?
We do sometimes, yeah. In fact, I can show you just quickly. So we do have a lovely thing on our website, which is worth having a look at, where you can just see everything that we've ever done. Let me just show you just quickly while I have it on. The application, blah, 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 blah. Chrome tab, here we go. Back issues, right, share. So, so this is all of our back issues, and you just kind of see going back. So obviously we've got going back for 10 years now, and we have a variation. I think we've gone through periods. I think at the beginning we were doing quite a lot of street art, and there's certain things that kind of will always catch our attention. We like bright, bold, beautiful pieces of art. We always like pieces of art that try to tie in some way, or that we think tie in to something that was happening. So I'm just kind of stopping on this one here. The kind of the fingers crossed one, which I think was around the time of the Brexit referendum, of just sort of, hoping for the best and not really kind of knowing what was going on. And that's the second Shepard Fairey cover that we did, the beautiful kind of wave one. That's a Michael Craig Martin cover. This is a fantastic Iranian artist. So we like to, and you can see that it's getting a little bit more kind of street arty. And then there's the very first one. So this one is the very first one was Shepard Fairey, and this next one, number 2, was a beautiful piece of calligraphy by Hassan Massoudi, and that was around the time of the Arab Spring. So we like to mix it up. We like to introduce people to new artists, and we like to give them exposure as well.
Yeah, so that's the main reason behind having these different artists and choosing maybe what feels right for the issue, and maybe even global culture, or what was happening around the world, which sort of grasps it, so able to express it best in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think actually, so this kind of new cover, I think, really kind of ties brilliantly well into what's been happening in the last 3 months, which obviously been dominated by the US election.
Yeah. Well, Rob, we've got another segment coming up, and that is Stop It Journalist. That's where you have some advice, and let me show the banner. And I'm really wondering what kind of advice you have to stop and to start doing.
Fantastic. Well, so I feel a little bit awkward about telling journalists what to do, but like, fine, I can take this. So for what it's worth, I would say, and obviously this doesn't apply to kind of a lot of journalists, but I think there's a huge amount of pressure on journalists these days to look for outrage. And I think the problem slightly that has been kind of created for us with social media is that if you want to find somebody, if you're on kind of a tight deadline and you're being asked to find stories about a backlash to something or people being upset or outraged about something, you'll find it on Twitter, you'll find it on social media. Like every possible expression of emotion under the sun is there.
Yeah.
So if you want to find outrage, you'll find it. But I think, I quite often find stories, talking about, backlash against or outrage at or, horror at and whatever.
Yeah, we could call it outrage confirmation. Like you have confirmation bias, then it's maybe confirmation outrage. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can find something to support any possible premise for any story if you look hard enough. But those stories where you start looking into it and you realize that it's based on 2 or 3 tweets.
Yeah.
I think, and I would imagine that 99% of the time, the journalists who are doing stories like that don't want to be doing them anyway, are kind of doing them under pressure, would much rather have time to go out and write something balanced. But the economics of digital journalism, purely digital journalism, when it's kind of driven by advertising and clicks, mean that you need to, A, put out a ton of content, and easily, this is an easy way to do it, and B, talk about people being angry and project outrage, because that's one of the things that kind of cuts through. But I think wherever possible, if you can resist that, if you can go to your editors and say,
will this be the advice, Rob?
Yeah, this is fine.
It's constructive. Yeah.
Is this the outrage? Yeah. Story built on a premise.
Stop the outrage. Stop following the outrage and confirm the outrage. Yeah.
And just sort of, resist any story that people are pushing you to do, which is based on a couple of people being angry on Twitter, because everybody's angry on Twitter, so it's it's not really a big deal. And then in terms of, have you got a thing for start doing it journalists? Have you got a logo for that as well?
No, I'm sorry. No, it's stop it. I wanted to start with outrage because that works on digital, Rob. As you.
Very good. So I think in terms of like do it more. And this, obviously, this is kind of it's not always possible. Is I do think that there's a tremendous value in taking the longer view on stories. So the kind of number of times that I think that the experiences of our present day can be informed by things that have happened to us before. So we did a slow journalism night at Somerset House in January, and it was the first of what was going to be like a series of slow journalism nights throughout the year. And we started with Ian Hislop, who's the editor of Private Eye, kind of much respected editor, particularly in the UK. And he was saying exactly this. He was saying, every time, for example, there's a royal story, and everybody says, nothing like this has ever happened before. Oh my God, the monarchy is about to collapse. This is unprecedented. He said, just look back. Look back 10 years or 20 years, you'll have found much madder, worse things going on in the royal family. And look back even further than that and you'll find more. So
what would be your most sort of pragmatic or practical advice? Because I can imagine that a lot of maybe the younger journalists, but also journalists with a lot of experience would say, no, but my editor-in-chief doesn't want me to take my time because we need to put out these publications, these articles, these videos.
Well, I would say that the medium is different from the message in this case. So, I mean,
McLuhan right here, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I wish that was mine. But like in this instance, you could be working on a lovely kind of deeply researched piece. So for example, if you were doing a piece, I just got pitched a fascinating piece about the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
1918, and somebody who's really kind of gone to town on the detail and the history and research. Really exciting, really interesting piece. Now that is the sort of piece that could go out on any given day with any given hook during this pandemic. You could just put a news hook on it, or you could look at things that are coming up in the future and that have anniversaries of 25 or 50 or 100 years, whatever it might be. So that's fine. it doesn't have to mean that you can't put it out in a fast format, of course. But I would say to them, if your editor says, I don't want any stories that provide context or perspective from the past, I literally only want to go on stuff that's happening now. Firstly, think about getting a new job, and secondly, come and pitch me, because that's the sort of story that I commission day in day out, and I really I'm fascinated by.
That's an interesting offer, Rob.
Yeah. I think there's also, I'm very open to it. I think in our FAQs there's my email address on our site. We're very open to pitches from new authors at all times. But I think there's a market for it as well. I do think that people are A, interested by the past, and B, interested in anything that humans have been through before that sheds light on what we might be going through now.
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting piece of advice, Rob. So thank you. And I do have a banner for live Q&A, because that's the last part.
Very good.
It's here.
Look at that.
And there is another question, and let me get it on the stream, and it's by John Crowley, and I have to read it from my computer. Sorry if asked already, I've missed part of the call. Have you had a pandemic bump in membership? Apart from content, have you tweaked your methodologies this year? What Christmas deals do you have? So those are 5 questions in one comment. Thank you, John.
These are all excellent questions. Thanks, John. So yes, we got a pandemic bump in subscriptions. So we were really kind of bracing ourselves as to what was going to happen. And we were kind of really pleased that we did have a big uptick in subscriptions over the summer. Lots of people at home, bored, trying to find out more about what's going on in the world. That was kind of offset financially for us by the complete decimation of newsstand sales, of course, because obviously we sell a huge amount of our magazines through places like train stations and airports. Yeah. All those were closed down, and independent magazine stores were closed down. But yeah, we did, so that was great. Yes, we've tweaked our methodologies hugely this year. Actually, so yeah, I don't know whether you count this as methodology, but basically, the coronavirus pandemic was a massive kick up the arse for us to finally put in place some credible digital proposition. So we've been talking about it for years, and we were hunkered down in April. And we were thinking, well, what can we do? What can we do during this time to make things better? So my co-editor Marcus set about digitizing everything that we'd done, every single issue of the magazine going back to 2010. And we decided to give that as a free additional service to our subscribers. So, if you get a print subscription, you can also get access to all of this. And then we thought, well, actually, let's sell a standalone digital thing as well, because there's some people in Australia, for example, that are saying, well, look, it's going to take me weeks and weeks and weeks to get the printed issue of the magazine. Can I just get a digital subscription? And some people who don't want print in their homes anymore. It's too much kind of clutter for them. What they talk about clutter anyway. So we did that, and then we did all these new digital events. We'd always done events in London at King's College, a lovely lecture theatre there, and people had often said to us, "Why don't you do them, on Zoom?" And I'd say, because I think it'd be dreadful, and you wouldn't have that same interaction and so on. Actually, we did our first class on Zoom, and it was amazing. It was so intimate and so lovely, and
you had people from all over the world attending, right?
I had, in the first class, I had somebody from Thessaloniki in Greece, and somebody from Dublin, I had somebody from Sao Paulo, and I had somebody from Las Vegas. Wow. So these subscribers that I would never, ever, ever have had a chance to talk with, and we got a chance to talk and interact and kind of share ideas, and it was wonderful. So that has been a real quantum shift for us and a positive thing. And finally, yes, we've got Christmas deals. I'm going to write down the code. So the code that you need to know, and please do put this in the show notes as well, is... Yeah. Slow Ho Ho. And Slow Ho Ho is our Christmas promo code, and Slow Ho Ho will get you 15% off a subscription this year, which is well worth having. Thanks, John.
Yeah, John. Well, there were some very intelligible questions, and obviously we have a very good audience here. And I hope, John, that we've not we, it was Rob who answered your questions. And if there are others that have questions, please do put them in the live chat, and we'll see if we can answer them. And but otherwise, we've come more or less to the end. Rob, it's been 47 minutes already, and I promised 45, so I think we are about to wrap it up. Slow Ho Ho is the code, and you get a discount, right?
You do 15% off
50% off.
If you're in the UK, that means that you can get a year of slow journalism and all those lovely discounts and the access to the digital stuff for just £30.60.
Yeah, and it would be a great gift for other people. It's a gift. So, Rob, once more, thank you for joining us today and for sharing your advice with us, especially really interesting about your mini course on data visualization. I think we've all learned something. And then if you're rewatching, you can watch this over and over again and stop and look at the examples. But I can recommend to subscribe and get these print copies because they're beautiful just to watch and to read. And it's been a pleasure having you, Rob. And
real pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, next month we will have our first real Dutch person, and it will be Vreekamp. And he worked for different newspapers, and now he heads the Dutch press agency, ANP. And we're looking at what kind of innovations they're doing. They're doing something with their photo archives as well. I'm very interested. So please stay tuned for next month. It will be a week before Christmas because we don't want to keep you YouTubing during Christmas Day. And
there's going to be nothing else to do on Christmas Day.
So maybe you can rewatch over Christmas, of course. Yeah. But thank you for watching. And if you didn't already, please subscribe. Yes, Rob, I have to tell the audience every time. They told me at the YouTube Academy. But thank you once again, and let's hope, and I wish you a very good another 10 years, at least another 10 years for delayed gratification, and looking forward to all your future plans on maybe a kids version, a Spanish version, as you told me, and podcasts, and we'll be keeping a close watch, and I'll hope to talk to you soon again. Thank you, Rob.
Great speaking with you. Take care. Cheers now.
And thank you for watching. Bye.